Terry Bradshaw, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's flat. He throws. It is.
The agony of defeat.
Frazier! Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier!
Hey everyone out there in podcast land, I'm Scott Johnston and this is the Past Our Prime podcast. Trust me, my two other hosts and friends, Bill Mahoney, Mark Hoffman, and myself know a thing or two about being past our prime. We have the resumes to back that up. What's up, fellas?
I'm still in my prime.
Exactly. I'm in my prime, as Doc Holliday would say.
Fun show coming up, I think.
We do.
I like how we're stepping out of
We're
our
ready to
comfort
go.
zone. You know, sometimes you do a show, and the cover is an NBA Hall of Famer, and the guest is Peter Vesey, and you kind of know, hey, we're talking Dr. J.
Yep.
But not the case today. We are stepping out and heading to the beach. Going to talk some volleyball with two greats. Jim Menges, one of the greatest beach volleyball players ever, but before that, he went to UCLA and played for Al Scates, a legendary volleyball coach, the John Wooden of... Actually, you should say that John Wooden is the Al Scates of basketball coaches. Right. I mean, his resume is off the chart. So looking forward to talking with both of them. And I know what you all are thinking. Volleyball? Really?
It's awesome.
But let's be honest. Volleyball is the coolest sport we all wished we could be good at. It had everything. Cool clothing, good-looking girls.
That's when in high school, all the good-looking girls played in the volleyball.
Right.
All of them.
And if they didn't, they went and watched the volleyball players.
Yes.
You know, everyone's tan,
They were so good.
unbelievable athleticism. You win, and the next thing you know, you're drinking a Corona.
Yep.
I mean, it was just the best.
Yep.
I think the girls' volleyball is more popular than the men.
Yeah. And then, of course, the names, Karch Karai, Sinjin Smith, Randy Stoklos. And on the women's side, Misty May, Kerry Walsh-Jennings. I'm telling you, volleyball players are the rock stars of athletes. There's a mystery to them, you know? Mm-hmm. They're kind of like, they would walk around high school and you'd be like, I didn't know that guy was such an awesome athlete, but he can jump through the building.
Well, it's interesting, too, because beach volleyball has really taken off. It's an Olympic sport, you know, and there are a lot of popular tournaments now that are actually played on the sand, which is where the sport evolved from.
Like Hermosa Beach, if you go down there in the summer, they have a tournament down there, and it is phenomenal to watch how great all these players are. Women, men, they can do things that you just leave going, that seemed impossible.
And it's just, they fly under the radar, Billy, because you were just telling me about your buddy, whom you knew for years and years, and you had no idea that he was an NCAA champion.
Yeah.
You know, he just kind of throws it out there.
Yep.
So these guys are really...
And usually the coolest guys, too.
Yeah, yeah, flip-flops.
Yeah.
You know, let's go grab a beer.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, it's so true. So true. So, scorecards, anything? What do you got, Mark?
Well, the Title IX thing from the 1972 Education Amendment. But it's interesting. What they were trying to push here was equality of opportunity. Not necessarily that women should be paid the same as men in sports, just that they'd have equal access to sports. There would be as many sports for women in college as they are for men, but, you know, not necessarily that that to pave the way for the pay grade, which is a huge issue today. You know, looking at Caitlin Clark, who's only going to make like under $700,000 in the WNBA, but she's also getting a $28 million endorsement deal. So it's interesting. There's a big disparity in pay between men and women's sports, and I don't know if it'll ever get to the point where it's equal. But the gap is the interesting part of of will it close? And again, it depends a lot of times on ratings and attendance, but it's an issue that's evolving.
Did you say 700,000? Because I think it's 70,000 that Caitlin.
Yeah, I meant that's what I meant actually.
Yeah.
It's not 700. It's 67,000 and change. Yeah,
I mean,
I think 700,000 she'd
be okay.
Right. Well,
I mean, she might be the one that changes that because
She's got quite the Nike deal.
Yeah, she
And
has a huge Nike deal.
That's
no
gonna
question.
that's gonna open up the door.
and it'll be interesting to see the
more women.
ratings for WNBA
That's the key,
games.
because
Right.
the WNBA still is a loser when it comes to making money.
But
They're
didn't it-
subsidized by the NBA, and until they start turning a profit, and she may be the one that helps turn the corner in that regard, salaries will remain what they are.
But remember, I think I heard. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm close to it. That there were 3 Indiana Fever games televised last year. There's 28 this year.
See?
So they're going to make sure if you don't know Caitlin Clark, you're going to know her.
Right, and then what happens is
There's another girl on a team. Yeah.
another girl on that team, an
Yep,
opposing team.
you know.
I mean, that's how it grows.
Would have been better for the WNBA if she had gone to the Sparks or to the New York Liberty.
Probably.
Yeah.
But
Probably.
But
it
they
makes
didn't
India-
manipulate it. They could have manipulated it to get her there because the Sparks had 2 picks in the first round. It was like number 2 and number 4 or whatever it was. And they had
Right.
2 picks. And they
So they could
didn't
have
do
traded
that.
for her.
Yeah.
But I mean, they
like
got 2
3
really
and
good
5.
players too. But I think
Yes.
it's interesting. She goes to Indiana and she played at Iowa, so it keeps that Midwest kind of
And
theme going.
Indiana's a big hotbed of basketball
Right.
as well. So.
Yeah.
But again, this whole thing back with Title IX was the idea, the concept they were trying to push was equality of opportunity. That was the key thing there. And I know a lot of men's sports were canceled because they had to make an equal amount of women to men's sports, but that was the goal of it at that time.
Yeah, I don't know if it achieved exactly what they were looking for, but it certainly, women's sports now compared to what it was 50 years ago is night and day. Anything from you, Billy, in the scorecard?
Yeah, the Topps Bubblegum identified 14 San Diego Padres as playing for Washington. And then they distributed thousands of the cards with the gummed up works, and they stopped the presses. Have now become collector's items. Now,
Yeah.
back in '74, they were worth $2 a piece. Might be a touch more nowadays.
Yeah, it's funny because like I've mentioned in the past, I used to collect cards, and you looked for those error cards. And I remember one time I had I think it was 1979. I
Yeah.
could be wrong, but I got a Bump Wills out of the
I remember
pack.
him.
And it had him on the Blue Jays, I want to say. And I remember opening it and being like, he's on the Rangers. And yeah, it was
Wow.
they distributed, and so the Bump Wills Blue Jays card was worth a lot.
I bet it was. Do you
And
still
the
have it?
Bump Wills Rangers card, I think so. I got
Ah.
my buddy Victor and I collected. We used to go to shows, and we were the kind of little shysters that we would go to a guy's booth, and he'd be selling a Bump Wills error card, let's say, for $12. And someone had just come to our booth and said, "Do you have any Bump Wills error cards?" And I'd say, "Yeah." How much, and he'd be like, he'd be like $20. I'd be like, "Oh, I'll go get it." I'd go to the guy 2 tables down. I'd give him the $12 for his card, come back and sell it for
Dang.
20. We did that kind of stuff all the time. But anyway,
You were Amazon before.
yeah,
Amazon.
yeah. Vic and I collected pretty much throughout the 80s together. We combined our collections. A lot of 60s.
Wow.
I think I told you we have a couple Pete Rose rookies, a
Wow.
Reggie Jackson rookie and stuff. And then, they do what a lot of them, they're all in, in sheets, protected and stuff. And they've been in his garage for, I haven't seen him in 30 years.
Wow.
So,
There was a Billy Ripken, a famous error
That's
card.
right.
I forgot what it was. What was he flipping, or what was he? There was something
yeah,
wrong with
that's
it.
right. He was doing something.
Yeah, yeah.
Billy Ripken.
But yeah, it's the other.
Troublemaker.
I collected as well, and the other day I'm cleaning out boxes, and out falls a signed Rich Gossage rookie card.
No way, really?
Oh yeah.
White Sox?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. For some go. There you go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking of baseball, they said it. Sparky Anderson, Cincinnati Reds manager, explaining why he likes the latest bubblegum cards. They've taken my playing record off and put my managerial record on. So, once again, one of those guys who growing up, I never thought of Sparky Anderson as a player, but of course all these managers were players. That's all the managers now are all former players, you know.
Did you read his line though? I mean, in terms of what his batting
No,
average
tell
was?
me. I know it
In
wasn't good.
1959, he hit 218,
Ah.
0 home runs, 34 RBIs, 6 stolen bases, but he was caught stealing 9 times.
Ah.
And then his managerial record, 2194 and 1834, 5 pennants and 3 titles. 1 in each league.
Some of the
Yeah,
best
that's right.
baseball players or baseball managers were not very good players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Russa, Bochy.
Was La Russa a player? I always mind you, and this is years ago. They said he was an attorney
Yeah.
or a lawyer. He was a player before that.
He was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
There was one other article I thought was interesting in the scorecard, though, was the one about Becky Dooley, who was a girl who played on or was trying to play on the Chaffee, North Dakota high school team. And they basically didn't want, North Dakota High School Activities Association ruled that they would have to forfeit games if she played. So in the 7th inning, the coach brought her in, and as they were going to kick her out, he ran in with a temporary restraining order. So everything looks good. Becky can play. But then they realized later, I think she fouled off 2 pitches and no 2 count, that they'd never told the umpire of the lineup change.
Oh, that's right.
So,
that's right.
so they had to rule her out, and she had to go to the bench.
Yeah.
Best laid plans.
Yeah. A matter of Celtic pride. We talked about this quite a bit last week. It's the cover of this week's Sports Illustrated. Celtics beating the Bucks in a classic NBA Finals. Honestly, if this was a Finals, now or even say post 85, it would be remembered by everybody because it was just an unbelievable 7-game series in which the road team won 5 of the 7 games, including the last 4. Milwaukee wins game 6 on a last-second shot by Kareem. So you think they're going home and they're going to blow out the Celtics. Nope, just the opposite. Celtics control it from the get-go. They win game 7. John Havlicek is the MVP, banner number 12 for the Celtics, but they're first without Bill Russell. So it really gave the Celtics some credibility that, hey, look, we're an organization. Red Auerbach has built something here that's not just the great Bill Russell.
And Havlicek was the MVP of the series, but he only scored 16 points in Game 7. But because they were focused on him, it allowed Dave Cowens to score 28, which was the key in that game.
Yeah.
And then Game 6 was the thrilling double overtime game.
Right.
One on a Kareem 15-foot skyhook.
Right.
So,
But the guys on that team, I mean, like you said, nowadays it would be huge. I mean, Havlicek, Hall of Famer. Cowens, Hall of Famer, I believe.
Yes.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Hall of Famer. Bob Dandridge was on that team. Oscar Robertson. You had amazing names on that nowadays everyone would be watching. But back in that day, it was like, oh, okay.
I'm not even sure. Yeah. I mean, I was only not quite 6.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine that game was getting a lot of play in California.
No, you'd read it in the Times.
Right. Right.
but what I liked about Sports Illustrated, they didn't just do the NBA Finals. They had on the same thing, the ABA Finals,
That's
which
right.
I thought was great.
Yep.
Dr. J leading the New York, not New Jersey, not Brooklyn, the New York Nets to a win over the Utah, not Jazz, but Stars
Yeah.
in 5 games.
Yep. No, they really did the ABA justice. Sports Illustrated.
They did. There was the article, and then there was the other article in the ABA.
And that's how. And if you look at it, they cover this World Football League a lot, and it didn't take off.
Right.
Didn't do anything.
The ABA ends up merging with the NBA.
Bringing the rules.
And you have to think that Sports Illustrated, which was so influential back then, had at least something to do with
Yes.
that. Because, same with the WHA. They cover the WHA back then.
That's how I love
pretty
the
regularly,
WHA so much.
Yeah.
I just loved it. I loved the scoring and a lot of the players.
I was a big ABA fan. I actually followed it a little more than the NBA
Yeah.
points in the 70s.
Nets are up 2-0 in the series over Utah, but trail by 3 with 10 seconds left in Game 3. But remember, this is the ABA, not the NBA, and they had the 3-point shot. So Dr. J is double teamed. A guy named Wendell Ladner hoists a 3 and misses. He misses so badly he knew he had missed, so he follows his shot. He gets his own rebound. He finds Brian Taylor, who buries it from 25 feet to send the game to overtime. In overtime, the Nets win 103-100 to go up 3-0 in the series, and they would win it in 5 games. Dr. J, the MVP of the ABA season, and a championship, and really, I mean, yeah, Sports Illustrated helped a little bit with the ABA. Dr. J helped a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to say there's one reason that a league can flourish, but we talk all the time. You know, last week we spoke at the end of the show about Pete Maravich and David Thompson about how their game would have played in today's, and Dr. J right there with them, if not. I was watching the other day that one shot he makes against the Lakers where he goes under the basket.
Yeah.
There was like on Twitter or something, there was like 4 or 5 different angles of it, a couple that I had never seen. To think he would even try it.
Yeah.
It's like, he's literally behind the basket. His athleticism, unbelievable. So,
And the ABA not only brought the 3-point shot and, 4 teams into the NBA that are still there, but a lot of great players besides Dr. J. George Gervin and
Thompson.
Rick Barry played in the ABA. There were a lot of Artis Gilmore, right?
Yeah.
There were a lot of good players.
Dan Issel.
Right.
They could have called it, what is it, the Dr. JBA? Anyone?
Yeah, that's
Anyone?
right.
Very good.
Yeah.
I think the thing that got me was you said about Brian Taylor, about he hitting the game-winning shot, get 3-pointer. He said, I'm not a good outside shooter. It's not that. It's that I made 8 out of 29 3-point shots this season. There are guys in the NBA, that's almost a 2-game total of 3-point shots. And I also was concerned about the medical practice in the ABA because it said Ron Boone, who had backhanded Brian Taylor in the teeth in the second game, was operating with an infected and swollen hand. Did they not treat the wound? I mean,
That's for the off season.
yeah, I looked at it, I thought, but there's no doctors evidently.
No. Just play.
Yes.
You're fine. I can't feel my hand.
And get out there.
Toughen up.
Deep in the heart for a change, the Texans have begun to care about the Rangers, and no wonder. Billy Martin, their dynamic manager, who had a habit of doing this, going to a place where a team was not supposed to do very well. He really, truly was a phenomenal manager.
Right.
I grew up watching Billy Ball with the A's. In 1979, the A's were 54-108. In 1980, Billy Martin comes on, and basically with the same team for the most part, and they go 83-79.
Was that Matt Keogh and Rick
That's
Langford
Keogh,
and McCaddy?
Mike Norris.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So the 5 aces.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the 79 season, they brought up a rookie by the name of Ricky Henderson.
He didn't do anything.
He did okay for them. But
Everybody thinks of Billy Martin as Yankee days and Steinbrenner, but he managed a lot of teams. He managed my Tigers for a while.
he did.
Yeah.
He
Wow.
led, and
Got them to the playoffs.
got him to the playoffs. And he had one game where they were like losing, and it was threatening rain. I think they were playing the Brewers, and so he just started stalling, hoping the rains would hit so the game would get canceled. And it blew.
They must have been losing.
Yeah, they were like down 9-0, and all the stall tactics, but he couldn't get it past that 5th inning. But then he got fired eventually, and then he ended up with the Rangers and did well. But he was a feisty dude and a really, really good manager.
He was a good manager, but he was a love-hate relationship with him, no question.
He was always bulletin board material too, because you never knew what he would say or do on the field.
And getting baseball in Dallas area,
Yeah.
they were behind the Cowboys and stuff like that, and they were the Washington Senators and then moved over there. And what people may not know is there were 2 Washington Senators in baseball. One moved to Minnesota and became the Twins, so they created a new expansion team, which they decided to call the Washington Senators also.
Right.
And then they moved to Texas. So when the current edition of the Washington team come up, thank God they picked the Nationals, because if they did the Senators again,
Plus,
they'd probably be in a different city now.
Now everyone hates senators, and anything to do with politicians would not be a good idea.
But did you notice that in this Ranger one, that the attendance,
Yeah.
16,000, which was the best in the American League. That's not even a Sunday getaway game now. That's so different. And also, did you read
That's
about...
a big crowd for my A's.
Yeah, it would be. It'd be a sellout. Did you read about Bobby Brown? I didn't know this. I mean,
Dr. Bobby Brown.
Dr. Bobby Brown. They got him to come out of to stop being a surgeon to be their team president for 1 month in 1974. Went back to being a surgeon, then came back and was a president of the American League.
Yeah, for years.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
That to me is a movie. He's a player who won championships with the Yankees, became a certified doctor, came back and ran the American League. That's a genius.
Yeah. And they said that he was just come back and do it for a little bit.
Yeah, well, 1 month.
And he liked it.
Yes.
Liked it
Just
so much, he
amazing.
stuck around.
Yeah.
Leaping Lizards, it's UCLA again. Now, I have to admit, I knew nothing about the unbelievable UCLA Bruins volleyball program.
Me neither.
Nothing. If you're asking me, UCLA in the 70s and their most dominant sport is basketball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, they were very, 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 very good at basketball. They were even better at volleyball. It's the 5th year of the NCAA Volleyball Tournament Championship, and the Bruins winning for the 4th time under head coach Al Scates. No team not from California has yet to be in the finals. So it's either UCLA against another California team. San Diego State's the other team that won it in 73. The captains were UCLA's Bob Leonard in 74 and UC Santa Barbara's David DeGroot, who were high school teammates in Pacific Palisades. Huh? Mark?
Yeah.
You know
You
them?
know them?
I probably do and don't even realize it.
Yeah, I think they told you to get off their lawn.
I did.
MVP of the tournament was UCLA's Mike Normand, a 25-year-old Vietnam vet who can jump like David Thompson. In fact, Norman says, they say Thompson jumps, well, I sky. So, love that.
That
And
was Thompson's nickname, though. Skywalker.
that's right.
Skywalker.
That's right. That is right. So
but
maybe
you know-
he skied as well.
But volleyball didn't become an NCAA sport until 1970.
Right.
That-
And so, but Al Scates coached for 48 years and won 19 titles. 19 titles. That's insane. And in that 74 season, they weren't even the favorite. UC Santa Barbara was, and they beat, Santa Barbara in the finals. But that's just the domination is just insane.
Yeah, they've won 23 titles. And it's not like they went away. They keep winning titles.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to have a couple really good guests on there. We talked
That
about
can
Al
talk about
Scates
that, yes.
and Jim Menges. So, and Jim Menges also known for his beach volleyball career, which I when I looked at this, I had to read it twice. In his 13-year beach career, he entered 75 open tournaments, advancing to the final 62 times and winning 48 events.
Yeah.
He also made it. He also teamed up with Greg Lee to win a couple championships.
Greg Lee.
UCLA basketball guard.
Right.
A couple championships
Couple
there.
championships
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It all comes back to the basketball.
I mentioned that UCLA was coached by Al Scates, a legendary college volleyball coach who was at UCLA for almost 50 years. Unbelievable. Coach Scates joins us now on the Past Our Prime podcast. Al, you're 24 years old and you convince UCLA to hire you to be the head coach of the volleyball program. How did you go about doing that?
Well, I really wanted to coach. I'd already coached football and basketball and some other sports. I wasn't thinking about being a volleyball coach, but the chance to be a head coach was attractive. So I went in to see the athletic director, Wilbur Johns, and I told him that I wanted to be on the Olympic team, but I wanted to coach the team, but I couldn't take a salary. And he jumped out of the chair and said, "Congratulations, son, you're hired." And apparently I was the only applicant.
Al, you needed an agent.
But his coaching
percentage would have been the same as my salary.
That's a good point. Very good point.
But is the secret to coaching the same for no matter what sport you do, whether it be football or volleyball? It's the same philosophy that you use?
Well, I taught school for 35 years so I could afford to be a volleyball coach. Now the best coaches are making over $1 million a year, but in those days, not so much. And I taught my kids, I taught physical education, and I taught them the same way as I taught my varsity volleyball team. Even starting with the fourth grade, I basically taught them the same skills, the same way, boys and girls together. And yeah, I coached my captain in '72, Eddie Machado, when he was a Pee Wee football player. And we won the county championships in basketball, baseball. I think we took second in football. Yeah, it's all the same as far as I'm concerned.
6 years in, the NCAA elevates volleyball to a championship sport. And that worked out well for you. 19 NCAA championships for you over the course of your career. That's just astounding. How is that possible? How could someone have that much success? What was your secret?
Well, the secret was to make it an NCAA sport, first of all. When I played on the U.S. team, in 1965, we had a match against France, and we only had 175 people watching at Carson High School in California. So I needed to publicize it. Otherwise, I was going to be a school administrator and just give up the whole business. Paulie was just built in '65. On a Tuesday night, December 14th at 7 p.m., I had the Japanese gold medalists play the USA team. That was the women's side. I had the Japanese men, the silver medalists, play the U.S. team. I had one of my UCLA players on that team, Ernie Swora. He was an Olympian in '64, and myself. And then we played SC. We just won the USA Collegiate Volleyball Championships. And we just gave mailers to season ticket holders, but I had to go to the beach and put up posters. I had to call Bud Ferrello and go on his talk show every night. In a talk show, the steam room. My wife had to type up articles every day. I'd go down to the LA Examiner during my lunch break and give it to Bud. He would run it. He was the editor of the sports department there. LA Times wouldn't even do anything. I couldn't get past the receptionist. But I could now, but I couldn't back then. Anyway, 5,000 people came to this event and paid. And J.D. Morgan, our athletic director, said he was going to make it an NCAA sport, and he did. Once I knew it was going to be an NCAA sport, I decided I was going to stay and coach at UCLA. And we got off to a good start.
So in the 70s, you start your run of winning these titles.
Yeah.
And in the Sports Illustrated article, it talks about the '74 team, and you'd already won, I believe, 2 or 3 titles by that time, but you still weren't considered the favorite. Talk about Southern California was just loaded with volleyball talent.
Well, unfortunately, Santa Barbara wanted me to be the full-time coach up there. And '71, they called me because it was very popular up there. And I had promised my assistant coach, Rudy Swora, who was even making less than me at the time, who was also a teacher, that if I had a job offer, I'd give it to him because I was going to stay at UCLA. So I sent him up there, and he was a damn good coach, and he built the team up. And they were big and strong and the overwhelming favorites to beat us. And our problem was we had to get by USC in a tough finals, and they had a Brazilian Olympian playing for them, but we couldn't stop. And I just remember Mike Norman, one of the guys in that match. We dug a ball; it was spinning all over the place, and he took it with his hands, made a perfect set. We put it away and beat SC, and then we got a chance to beat Santa Barbara. I can tell you one of the reasons we beat him is because we're down 7-1 in the 5th game, and I put in a sub to serve, and he served 6 straight points, including 3 aces. A boy named Saban Perkins. And we just had a reunion at UCLA, from that 74 team. We had 200 people show up, including Saban, and I haven't seen him since.
Wow.
I hadn't seen him previously to that reunion because he said, I could never do this again. And he didn't come back to the team. He went to Mexico for quite a while, several years. And, he had broken his finger, and the only thing, he was a setter, so he was useless. So I had him serve for a couple hours every day. And I brought him over, and the first team was having trouble passing. And he was a great server, and they were great passers, but I knew he was ready. And we had a guy named Mike Norman who was only 5'10". Santa Barbara was big. Our biggest guy was 6'3". We had a middle 6'1". They had some big guys, John Roberts, those guys are probably 6'5", 6'6". And our outsides were 5'10", just little guys. That Stormin Mike Norman would put a ball away and point to his left bicep if he put it away left-handed, run around the gym. We only had 100 people in the gym because they sold all the seats. It only held 3,000. And there was standing room only in our block because we were in that large qualifier and qualified late, was only 100 people. And Wide World of Sports was covering it. The TV lights were on. It must have been about 100 degrees in that gym. It was a pretty amazing event.
You mentioned Mike Norman. He was only 5'10", but he could apparently jump through the roof. I mean, he had serious hops. Tell me a little bit about him as both a person and a player. He was a kind of a different guy.
Yeah, he was very intense, very intense. He's a former Green Beret when I got him, and he took it quite seriously. And one time when we were behind, I let him take control of the huddle, and I didn't say a word while he screamed at the players for 2 minutes during the TV timeout. But in my opinion, he would have been, I don't think he would have been very good unless I let it out. And he went on to have a fantastic match. And Bobby Leonard, my captain, had played, this was his 3rd NCAA championship. And he started for me for 4 years. He had the best match of his life. And our setting was great. Jim Menges and John Beacons were the setter, 2 great setters. Menges went on to have a great pro beach. Oh, wait a minute. He were playing amateurs volleyball with no pots in the beginning, but still, he was one of the greatest volleyball players on the beach there was. And he finally had a chance to earn later. But we had a great team. They all showed up at the reunion, except for John Beacons. He passed away, had a heart attack during a pickup basketball game about 30 years ago. But it was great to see them all. And I think Santa Barbara went to the US VBA championships, which was illegal after the NCAA, and they won that, but they didn't beat us that night.
It's interesting. So you won at Long Beach State, beating a very tough Long Beach State team to win the title in '74. And the current UCLA team, didn't they have to go? I'm sorry, you won at Santa Barbara. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Against a very tough team. The current UCLA team, kind of similar, had to go to Long Beach State, play a very tough Long Beach State team, and they won they won back-to-back, I guess, for the first time since you guys did it in '96. To watching this year's team do that, was that a special thing for you?
Yeah, I was on the floor. I was watching both matches. I watched the sem. I didn't go to the quarters. I went to the semis and finals, and we had about 50 guys in something called the sandbar, which was a bar right on the floor, and we had more Bruins in there than Long Beach people. So it was a great time to watch the match with a bunch of volleyball alumni, and two great teams, both nights. UC Irvine on Thursday night gave us an awesome match too. That was we had a lot of the players blocked, served, and dug so well. It was amazing. Best defense I've seen in a long time. Maybe. I mean, at the college level, it was the best defense I've seen at the college level.
And Jim, I got to bring you back. You had 19 titles, and I had to look up that twice, thinking that just seems crazy. That's 19 in a lot of ways, different players every year. How were you able to mesh those personalities together to bring the best out of them? What is some of the tactics you used?
Well, unlike some coaches that talk a lot about culture and all that, I just selected the best players they were. I didn't care if they liked each other or not, as long as they played well together on the court. And it turns out that they mostly, after working as hard as I made him work, doing 300 sit-ups, 300 push-ups before I got the balls out, they kind of bonded, no matter how diverse they were coming in. And I'll tell you another thing I did. It was real easy for us to repeat because I usually had 3 starters coming back. So if I had a team that was in the finals previous year and they had 3 guys coming back, there was a damn good chance we were going to win again. Now, things are different now because you can change with the portal and everything. You can bring in people that are just studs that have already played somewhere else. But we didn't do that back in the day.
When you started coaching at UCLA, John Wooden was still there, and you've said he had a big influence on you. Did he give you any advice when you first took the job or when you were coaching at the same time?
No, the influence was from reading his first book on basketball, which had about 20 pages of how to coach and how to be a coach. I read that, and that was the best stuff I read. I had to, when I coached, I had to read books on different sports every time I coach. I mean, I coached football, high school football before I coached volleyball. And so I went out for the football team at Santa Monica College because I knew I wanted to coach football, and I never played. But I had to get into each sport. If I coached track, I had to buy a book or talk to somebody. Never talked to John. I was teaching full time. I didn't get to UCLA until after he was in practice. He had practiced from 5 to 7 when I first started coaching. No, 3 to 5. Then freshman ball would come on from 5 to 7. And then we would practice from 7 to 9, only on Wednesday nights. That was it.
Wow.
There was no gym, one little men's gym. Then when Paulie was built in 65, then I got to practice more and finally just like a normal team. But at first, men's, faculty badminton would come in at 9 o'clock and kick us off the court.
Well, you have to have your priorities, you know.
You needed Mike Norman to tell them you guys gonna have to wait a little bit.
Well, you know, I brought Mike Norman back as an assistant coach, and I think his favorite thing to do was to kick out all the basketball players every day at 3 o'clock. It hurt.
Did the basketball team, did you have to take the old basketball uniforms? Because the volleyball uniforms in the 70s looked exactly like the basketball teams.
Yeah.
Today, it's completely different.
Yeah, when they retired my number in the UCLA Hall of Fame, it was 50, a basketball. My first UCLA uniform had pants on it with a metal belt, buckle. So it was definitely basketball uniform. But Coach Wooden would come across with the uniforms all the time, so we were styled up pretty good.
What was your relationship like over the years with Coach Wooden?
Well, it was great. I got to know him when he retired because he'd be in the office all the time answering fan mail, and he'd get there every day and walk around the track. Of course, I'm still teaching. I taught till 97 full time. So I won most of those championships while I was a full-time teacher. Of course, I was a full-time volleyball coach also, but that didn't happen until 78. But it took a long time for the salary to get up where I could actually afford to just be a volleyball coach. But now it's not a problem. But back in the day it was. But Coach Wooden and I hung out a lot in the office. And then we were both on the Valvoline Sports Advisory team committee. And so my wife Sue got to go to the annual meetings with him, and we'd spend a few days with him. And we'd take him out to dinner. He lives close by us here, or did, in Encino. And he used to like to go to the valley and get chicken and mashed potatoes. Once in a while, I would see him in the market and help him out. Sue helped him carry packages in at the post office. People kept sending him basketballs and stuff from the autograph, and then he'd bundle everything up, take it into the local Tarzana post office. So, he was in the neighborhood. We'd get invited to the same dinners. He'd come to the volleyball banquets. I'd say, Coach, you're comped, and he'd keep sending me checks. And finally, we just cash him because he would pay for Tony Spino his lifetime. He was the trainer for men's basketball, and later took care of John when he got into his 90s. And he'd pay for Tony and him to come to the dinner. And I'm going to the volleyball banquet tonight, as a matter of fact.
Oh, wow.
Volley Pavilion at UCLA. Yeah. And
Nice.
I mean, people talk about John Wooden because he won 10 titles, but you nearly doubled him. I mean, shouldn't be people talking about you more?
Well, it wasn't that big a sport in the beginning. I mean, international, when I'd go play in another country, like I'd take my UCLA team to a tournament in Taiwan, and then we'd have over 20,000 people watching us. And Paulie, we'd get a big crowd, would be 4,000 or 5,000 for SC, or maybe Pepperdine on the weekend. But if they didn't think it was a good team, they wouldn't show up. So it just, I don't even know, even this championship out here in Long Beach, I didn't see anything on sports news about it. So I don't know. Internationally, it's if you go to Poland, it's the #1 sport when you play in Poland.
Wow.
I took my team to Japan in '79, and we had sellout crowds wherever we went, 6 different cities, Osaka, Tokyo. All the stadiums were full. They put in the 4 rule. You can't have a foreign travel except every 4 years, because I took my team to the tournament in Japan, and next year I went to Taiwan. They said, "Oh, you can't do this." Well, I was the only team traveling. There was no basketball team traveling, just UCLA volleyball. So then I took them to Puerto Rico for 3 years, because that's a Commonwealth. And then I got a great Norwegian player, and I said, God, I'm going to go get some more. I went to Norway with the team. Found out he was the best player in Norway. I already had him. We froze. We went there for New Year's Eve. It was so cold. It was unbelievable. But I've taken my team all over Europe, and
So that leads me to this, Al, because I've forever thought volleyball has great athletes. It's got this really cool vibe, really good-looking people, star power. I've never understood why it didn't take off here the way that you're describing internationally. Do you have a theory on why in America?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so much in LA. There's so much going on. You got the Lakers, the Clippers, the Dodgers, the Rams. I mean, there's always something happening. The Chargers, and you got a hockey team. So when I was coaching I coached a co-ed pro team during the summer in El Paso. Well, we were in the newspapers every day. I'd play golf. They'd be interviewing me with a mini camp. That was '76, because nothing's happening there except as a minor league baseball team. But in the big cities, with all the other sports we have, it's a tough sell. Now you go to Poland, and They don't have football, They don't really play hockey over there so much. So you have a volleyball match, all the cheerleaders and stuff come out for that. When I go to Brazil with the U.S. team, the gym is full before you even start warming up. I mean, they're dancing in the aisles. The sambas music's playing, the DJ's playing. It's a huge thing. No football there either. No baseball there either. So that's the way it is.
Let me ask you, you had talked about one of your players just a little bit ago. We're actually going to interview Jim Menges here soon. What do you remember about him, and what is something that maybe you can tell us that we need to ask him? But what are some of your highlights of Jim Menges?
Well, when he played for me, he was just an intense, really quiet player. He couldn't straighten out his hitting arm to extend. I think he had some kind of football injury prior to arriving. But I just remember he was such a competitor. I didn't have to talk to him very much, and I talked to him more at the reunion than I did when he was playing for me all those years. And his career, I followed his beach career, and who was the point guard that played with Bill Walton?
Greg Lee.
Yeah, Greg and Bill were going to play for me every year, and they'd come watch practice in the beginning, and then at the end of the year, Bill would limp in the gym, says, "Coach, I just can't play. I'm now beat up." So he never did. But Menges and Lee were amazing duo on the beach, So I've seen him play on the beach too. Yeah. I don't know what you asked. His whole career. His big career was on the beach.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He made all tournament for me, I believe, in '74. Yes, he did, as I recall.
Just quiet intensity, I think, is good for him.
He's more verbal now.
So, Jim, we have a segment here called 50-50 where I'm going to ask you a trivia question from 50 years ago. You got a 50% chance of getting it right, okay? 50-50 chance. Okay. I got a quick question to ask you, though, before I get to the trivia question. When were you a PE teacher at Hawthorne and Horace Mann? Was that before the volleyball coach, or when were you doing that?
I stayed at UCLA and got my master's in '62. And that's when I took the UCLA job when I was teaching in Santa Monica for 3 years. Then I went to Beverly Hills for 32 years because they paid more. Plus, in Beverly Hills, they liked that I was the UCLA volleyball coach.
Sure.
They liked that. I'd walk into the superintendent's office, and he'd say, "Where are you going now? How much time you want off?" I said, "Well, I'm taking my team to Japan." "How long are you going to be gone?" He said, "I'll take care of it. I'll talk to the school board. I'll pay you. Write a report on junior high PE in Japan." Okay. Santa Monica, I'd beg to get time off. They wouldn't pay me, and they'd say, "We're not going to do this anymore." So I got out of it.
So, but the kids like in Beverly Hills must be going, "Wow, it's the UCLA coach, and he's, teaching us PE."
It's funny. I would take sixth grade boys and have them be my ball boys at UCLA for 3 years. That means at the matches, the pavilion's a large place. They shag the volleyball so there's no dead time. Use 3 volleyballs. And so those guys would be with me the whole time. And then I'd be invited to their bar mitzvahs. They're all Jewish kids. And so what I had to give them, I started giving them rings. I give my old rings or my new rings, whatever. If they were there for a championship, which they all were, then I'd give them a ring.
But my nephews went to Horace Mann. They might have been my nephews for all I know in the 90s.
That was my last school. Yeah, there's only 5 schools, including the high school.
Right.
That was the last one I went to. Horace.
Yeah, I went to Beverly Vista. How come no Beverly Vista, man?
I was
the
the
middle
vice
school now, I guess.
principal at
That could have
Beverly
been you.
Vista during the summer school when I was deciding whether to be a superintendent of the schools or go along with this coaching gig. Because
What year was that?
Oh, that was a long time ago because I started doing camps in '78, and I own and operate 10 volleyball camps all over the country. So,
Because
but
I graduated
was
in '73.
doing- Yeah, go ahead.
I graduated in '73, Beverly Vista.
Well,
when
I
it
was
was a
only
1
there
through
for
8.
one summer.
Okay.
I went to Horace Mann because I got out. School was PE was over at 2:30, and I could get to UCLA earlier.
Nice.
That's a good. So I've sidetracked us because I'm supposed to give you the trivia question, but I did have to ask you about
Okay.
the Beverly Hills. So anyway, here's your trivia question, okay? And you're a man who had a lot of winning streaks at UCLA. So, true or false? In May of 1974, the number one song on Billboard was "The Streak" by Ray Stevens.
True.
It is true. And of course, that had nothing to do with winning streaks, but
Yeah.
Scott, could you tell him what he won?
You couldn't make that up. That was good.
did you ever have to deal with streakers in 1974 at UCLA or anywhere?
No, we never had any. We had what would happen is I would have Descent Japan would make our uniforms,
Uh-huh.
and we didn't get our uniforms washed at UCLA, so the guys had to wash their own stuff in the beginning. The shorts would shrink to bun huggers, and then the next thing you know, all these beautiful co-eds would be in the first 3 rows in Poly Pavilion, looking at my guys play volleyball. That's the closest. It's not even close.
Hey, well, for getting that right, Mark's going to get you another metal belt buckle Al, as a commemorative gift. So I just want to say 5-time Coach of the Year, UCLA Hall of Fame. You coached 27 Olympians, 7 Players of the Year, a husband, a father, grandpa. Coach Scates, you've done it all, and you've done it well. So thank you so much for spending some time with us on the Past Our Prime podcast.
Thanks, guys. A lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Coach.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it. You know, another legend. And Mark, you would, know this better than anyone. But I mean, what a time to be a UCLA fan, student
Of all sports.
right?
Everything.
I mean, they just,
It was great, but like I say, I could never get over the fact that they look like the basketball team because the uniforms were identical to the basketball team's uniforms.
Right.
But yeah, no, I mean, it was such a dominant program. And I actually had Al on Sunday Sports Final during the 90s, I think, when we did the half-an-hour show with Jim Hill. And we had him in studio talking about, like, it might have been in 96 maybe when he won the last back-to-back before this year's team.
It is sad. It really is sad that here they just win back-to-back again. It's visually a very appealing sport.
Yes.
The things they do, the way they jump, and
Yep.
and yet he said, they can't even get a mention on any of the locals. It's pathetically sad.
How?
And he had to take other jobs because, it didn't, pay enough.
Right.
And how old is he?
84, I believe.
He seems like he still should be coaching.
Yeah.
He has that intensity and that drive. It just, a lot of times you see people that get older and they, it was great. No, he seemed like he wanted to get back out there. And I also like that coach used bun huggers. Because that's what I used to use.
Yep.
Get out of your bun huggers. I love that.
Nice. And that apparently drew the crowd.
Yeah, the girls, yes.
Yeah. I just think, once again, these guys are so humble. The guy won
Yeah,
19
I know he did.
championships in 48 years.
And he played it down. Well, they didn't have many teams.
Well, I just got good players. Oh, okay. Well, that's a good idea.
And we didn't have that many teams or anything. I'm thinking, no, 19 titles is 19 titles, no matter how you slice it.
Yep. And now from Coach Scates to one of his players from that 1974 championship team at UCLA. Jim Menges was a senior on that Bruins team and an All-American under Coach Al Scates. The Santa Monica, California native would go on to have an unbelievable beach volleyball career. He partnered with another UCLA Bruin, Greg Lee, winning 9 of 10 events in 1975. All told, during his 13-year career, Menges earned 75 open tournaments, advancing to the finals 62 times and winning 48 events. He is widely considered one of the greatest beach volleyball players ever, which is why he was inducted into the Beach Volleyball Hall of Fame 30 years ago in 1994. So there you go, Jim. You can go now. I just wanted to say all these great things about you, and have a nice day.
That's very nice.
That's a great interview.
That's quite a bio, my friend. I want to thank you for joining us. We just had Coach Scates on a few minutes ago.
Oh, wow.
So why don't we start with there and tell me about what you remember from that 1974 national championship team you were a part of.
Well, I got to UCLA in 72. I'd never really played indoor volleyball. And Scates talked to a guy named Ron Von Hagen, who was probably one of the all-time great beach players, and told him that I was a decent volleyball player. And anyway, it got me into UCLA, and we won the national championship in 72. Then we lost in the finals in 73, and then 74, we had a really good team. But the biggest win for us was we went up to Roberts Gymnasium at Santa Barbara for the finals. And we were, basically the underdog, but we just had this incredible match that went 5. We were down 7-1. Great move by putting in this guy named Sabin Perkins. He came in and served like 7 straight points, and we tied up the game and ended up winning the match. So big win for the little gutty Bruins.
Yeah, Coach Scates told us about the kid that came off the bench to serve, had a broken finger, so he couldn't do much else other than serve, and boy, did he come up big in a moment when you guys needed him.
Scates was always able to pull. Scates was probably the best in-game coach at that time by far. He just knew when to put guys in and when to take them out, and that was a brilliant move, putting in Sabin, because Sabin didn't play all that much, but he was, he put him in as a server, and the guy scored 7 straight points.
Jim, tell me, what was it like to play for Al? He said that you had this quiet intensity about him, and that you probably spoke more at your recent reunion than you did during your playing days at UCLA.
Well, I was always like very intense. When I play sports, I get super intense. I just remember, volleyball back then, it's so we went to our 74 reunion, and to watch volleyball now as to when we were playing, it's like a whole nother sport. These guys are touching 12 feet. They're just, everybody's 6'6", 6'7", or bigger. They hit the ball harder. It's really impressive to watch games now. Back when we played, it was just different. The players they're not as good as they are now, but I was always intense. And that's what got me through to beach volleyball, is because now you just have 2 people and it's all about intensity.
Where did that intensity come from? I mean, and how were you able to channel it just on the court and not in any place else, let's say off the court?
Well, I get intense off the court too, but
I didn't want to say that.
Yeah. But when I play, especially like in beach ball, and I did it in 6-man too. I just get into the game, and then I just want to win. I don't want to lose. So I get mad at myself. I may say something to my partner, but I'm more mad at myself, and I'm just trying to get jacked up. I think all the really good athletes have that kind of competitive drive. When you get going, you just want to beat somebody. I just wanted to beat them.
Is there a difference from the volleyball you played in college as to beach volleyball? Say in tennis, you have different surfaces, like you can play on the red clay or grass, and tennis players treat that differently. Is that similar to how it would be with beach volleyball?
Well, indoors is a totally different game because it's 6-man and you're on a hard court. There's no wind. On the beach, there's a lot of variables. There's wind. Certain beaches have thicker sand. It's harder to jump in. Back when we played, there were certain courts like Laguna, State Beach, Sereno, where the courts had kind of a mound when you went up to the thing. So if you were 5-6 feet off the net, you were 6 inches lower on the court. Now when they play, they rake everything's super flat. They go around and fix the lines, and they got 12 balls. They're all the same. When we played, you had one ball and that's the ball you played with. And it was hard to find one really good ball. And, you'd hit it, go down the beach, you'd go shag it and bring it back, and then you'd play your game while you're playing. So yeah, there's a big difference. Indoors, it's pretty much those, a little different, hardwood and then that soft, mushy stuff that some courts have, but it's all the same.
Jim, your college career ends in 74, and honestly, as a volleyball player in 74, you're a recent UCLA grad. It's time to get a job. but you had different plans. I imagine, your parents were like, what's next, Jim? And you're like, I'm heading to the beach.
Yeah.
But how did you know that this was going to become who you were?
Well, I didn't know for sure. I didn't know that. I got down to the beach in the summer of 69 is the first time I ever went to Sorrento. I had never really played much volleyball until then. I was a senior in high school, and a lot of my friends went to Sorrento. So we went down there. There was a lot of these guys playing on these courts, and they had one court. It was called A court. And these guys would just play games competitively all day long. And when I went down there, I just fell in love with the beach, because at Sorrento, you had this big wall and everybody sat against the wall, and all the girls would come by, and, guys are just looking at the girls. There was a lot of beautiful girls. And you were outdoors, you went in the water, and I fell in love with beach volleyball. So I started playing in tournaments, and 70, I was playing football at SMC, and I had torn something in my shoulder. So one summer, all I did was shoot the ball. I couldn't swing because I had torn something, and I just shot, and I learned how to control the ball. And then I just fell in love with beach volleyball. I started to go to the beach. I was going to the beach over 300 days a year.
What a life.
I mean, when I was a kid, you'd go to the elementary school and play pickup basketball. But for you, it would be go to the beach and play volleyball, because I noticed a lot of the players are from Santa Monica,
Right.
from the Palisades, that area. Was it just like sort of a pickup game? You could just go down to the beach and find someone to play?
Yeah, especially in the summer. In the summertime, there was always people at the beach. There was probably 4 or 5 courts going. There was mixed games, but once we started to get good, then we played on the A court, and you would play 8 games a day. We'd get to the beach at 8:30 in the morning, and we'd stay until the sun went down. And then after we played 7 or 8 games, we would, have beers, look at the sunset, and then we'd do it again. And then we were looking forward to tournaments. And back in the 70s, there was only 10, 11 tournaments a year. So you were looking forward to those events, and then you'd go to certain beaches, and then you got to play against their best players, and you just let's see who the best person is. And so you would go to these different beaches, and there was always a party John Lee had one in Santa Barbara, Woody Brooks at Corona del Mar, Featherstone Brothers in San Diego. And you'd look forward to going to these tournaments and then partying with all these guys. So, and I just fell in love with beach volleyball. The thing is, I didn't work. I worked in a restaurant. I worked at the Chart House as a waiter and a bartender, so I could make some money at night, but I didn't care about money. Money didn't mean anything. I mean, you just wanted to have enough money so you could go to the beach, go to the tournaments, and you lived. And that's what I did. And I loved it. It was back then, it was a lifestyle. Guys went to the beach in the morning, and you've got to remember, there's only, 10, 11, 12 beaches that had beach volleyball. It wasn't all across the country back then in the 70s. It was just basically a Southern California sport, but that was a lifestyle. I went to the beach every day. In the summer, I went every day. And then in the winter, even if it was like raining, we'd go to the parking lot and sit at Sorrento Beach. We had like 7 or 8 of us would go down there, we'd smoke joints or drink in the parking lot or just hang out at the beach. And then we'd play games when we could. And that's what I did for a long time.
Jim, it's beach volleyball, and I know it gets serious and competitive, but as you mentioned, you're going to the parking lot with your buddies, even when it's raining. It's a culture.
Right.
Do you have any story or two that kind of encapsulates that time in your life? Mid 70s, hanging out, just something crazy that and because I'm sure you guys are staying up late and having a good time, like you mentioned, but then it's time to play the next day.
Well, the first couple of years I played, it was more about going to the party on Saturday night and getting hammered and stuff, because I hadn't learned how to win yet. It was like the first 2 years. After that, then I became more serious about it, and I didn't get hammered on Saturday nights, so I could be able to play on Sundays. But that's what, just, like I said, it was like, that was the beach. That was the style that I wanted to live. There were certain guys, Von Hagen did that, Lang did that. They all ended up getting jobs, but I was able to like work a little bit at night, and I didn't care about money at that time. And I didn't care about having I didn't want a 9-to-5 job. So I started doing some TV commercials, made some money doing that stuff, but I was able to stay at the beach and just play in these tournaments. We used to go, like I said, we'd get there at 8 a.m, stay till 8 p.m, and then you'd look forward to competing in tournaments on the weekends, which were, every other weekend there was an event. So that's what we were doing.
Tell me about your relationship with basketball player Greg Lee. Why were you guys so good, and how were you so good as partners at beach volleyball?
Well, Greg got better than me fast. Greg won an open after like a little over a year. He had already won an open. It took me like I think the third year I was playing, I won an open, but it took me a little longer. But I started to play with Greg in the end of 74. We were kind of mixing around. I would play with Shamalis. Greg would play with Shamalis. I played with Von Hagen. I played everybody. We were kind of moving around. And then after at the end of 74, Greg and I started to play. And then in 75 and after that, we started to play consistently. I met Greg at the beach. He came down. His brother, John Lee, was a volleyball player. So Greg wanted to learn how to play volleyball. He always watched it, and he wanted to start to play. And so Greg started playing. He come down the beach in 1970, I think it was, the summer of 70. And we just all became really good friends. And Greg was my best friend through college. So we just got along really well. And then when we started to play, we started to learn how to win. We had really good ball control. Back then, it was a different game than it is today. In the 70s, you couldn't block over. There was no jump serving, side out scoring. The court was bigger. It was 30 by 30. Now I think it's 26-4 by 20. It's smaller court. So the games were different. Back then also it ended up being an endurance contest. You had to be in really good shape to win a tournament, because you were playing. I'm getting served when I play with Greg, I'm getting served 90% of the time. So I got to be in really good shape to be able to play 7 games in one day and to win the game. So, but the reason I think Greg and I got really good was because we were best friends, and we just played. We both had really good ball control. We were able to put the ball on the net more consistent than anybody else. And that's how you won those matches.
Did you have to play any differently when you were teamed up, say, with a Randy Stokely or a different partner than when you were with Greg, or was it still the same game you played?
It's still the same game. It's all about, back then, like I said, when you don't have blocking over, you don't have, it's more side out scoring. It's side out scoring. So now you'd have to, I can be down 13-7 and still win the game if I don't give up any more points. Now, if you're down 13-7, you're probably going to lose that match because it's rally scoring. But when I played with Stoklos had never won a tournament at that time. We played in the Manhattan Open. We won in 1981. He had never won a tournament at that point, but he was super good. But it's a real fine line of winning and losing. You know, it's like one or two plays in a match can change the whole match, and you got to learn how to win. And Greg and I, like Greg was like super confident. Whenever you play, and I'd play with Greg, he wouldn't warm up. And he goes, "These guys are terrible. Well, you're going to beat them anyway. Doesn't matter." And I'm scared of them. And Greg goes, "These guys are terrible. We'll kill them." And that's the attitude Greg had. He was better than them, and he was going to win no matter what.
You know, I wanted to talk because most team sports are just that: five guys on a basketball team, 6 guys on an indoor volleyball, 9 baseball. You know, but there's very few doubles sports now. The bond that you must have formed, like you said, you were best friends, but I'm talking about the relationships that lasted lifetimes with you, with these guys that were your partner. That must have been something to have these guys by your side, not just there on the sand, but for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Well, like with Greg, I was best man at his wedding. I mean, Greg was my best friend. One year we drove up to Tahoe 4 times to win $225 because that was the only place you could make any money. So we drove up in his little Pinto. We drove up to Tahoe, would stay the week, and then come back down. But I just got along with Greg. Taught me a lot of stuff. He got me into music. Greg was like super smart. He's like the smartest guy I knew. We just got along. We spent a lot of time together.
Do you still spend a lot of time at the beach? Do you still play a little
I
volleyball?
still- yeah,
I look at the palm trees behind you. It looks like you're ready to go.
It's not that easy anymore. But yeah, I still go down. There's like a group we play 4-man. Yeah, I still play, run around. Some days I can jump and hit a little bit, and other days it's a nightmare. You know, and I gotta wear pads on my arms now because my skin will pop. I get bruised, and I have to put leggings on because I kick myself and bloody. So it's a little different.
Yeah, just a tad.
You know, Jim, I grew up in Dana Point,
Uh-huh.
and I called a few guys the other day, and I said, we're going to interview Jim Menges. You, to a lot of those guys, you're a volleyball god. I think one guy even said that.
Really?
Did you know that you left that type of impression on a whole generation of people? Oh yeah, my friend said Jim Menges. He was like excited.
Not really. I mean, I've heard people say good stuff about me sometimes, but not really. It's just, you know, in the 70s, that's all I did in the 70s. I just went to the beach, played tournaments, and absolutely, I love beach volleyball. I love the whole beach lifestyle of going to the beach and competing against guys from other, you know, going to Laguna and beating their best guy, and going to Hermosa and beating the South Bay guys. And obviously during the 70s, I won more tournaments than anybody. So maybe, yeah, that's why. And one year in 77, the year I played 3 events with Greg, we won all 3. And then I picked up Marlowe, and we won 6 out of 7. And then I played 1 in Tahoe with Hooper. So that year, 77, I played in 10 events and I played in 11 events and won 10. And we got second in the other one. So,
Yeah, that might be why.
Yeah, but I'm saying didn't you also set the record with 13 open wins in a row? I know it was tied later on, but
right.
That type stuff, how does that happen, winning 13 in a row against some obviously great players on the other side?
Yeah, well, that was Greg and I. It went from 75 and into 76. We didn't even know we were winning. We didn't know that at the time we won 13. Later, we found out that we set a record, but like I said, we just got so confident that it didn't matter who we were playing, we knew we were going to win. So you build up to a point where, like I said, Greg always thought we were going to win. I was more scared when I played, but Greg just said, these guys, we're so much better than they are. We'll just kill them. So yeah, we set that record in 75, 76. We won 13 in a row.
And I have to ask, I was looking at a stat when you won the Hermosa Beach Open. There wasn't a lot of money that they were giving you. Do you remember what they actually gave you?
Yeah, that's a good one. In 1980, well, they never gave money, but in 1980, Matt Gage and I won the Hermosa Beach Open, and we got pitcher at the poop deck and a frozen yogurt. That was the winning. And in that tournament were Hovland and Dodd. A lot of those guys played in that. Some of those guys were just coming up and playing in that tournament. 10 years later, the exact same tournament, they got $100,000. Each guy got 50,000. So I got a frozen yogurt and a pitcher. That's the way it was.
How was the frozen yogurt?
I didn't eat the yogurt, but I had more than one pitcher.
So you went back for the second one. They said, no, you won once. Pay up, buddy.
But, we weren't playing for money. That's not what you were playing for. You were playing for. I was playing for the competition. I enjoyed going to certain people's beaches like Laguna. They would they would hang people in effigy if they didn't like somebody, and they had kegs in the buried in the sand because you weren't supposed to drink, but they had it buried in the sand, and people were getting and they had their local guys, and we'd go down there and beat them. That was the enjoyment I got.
Go down there, beat them, drink their beer, take their girls. Awesome. This is what I love. Nice.
A lot of beautiful women back then.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to ask you about. Not necessarily, but tell me your theory, Jim, because I think beach volleyball has all the makings of it kind of has a cult following still. I don't know why it hasn't had more of a broader appeal. Yeah. It has unbelievable athletes, good-looking people, a really cool vibe to it. Do you have a theory on why it hasn't gone to that next level?
No, I don't. I'm not sure what happened. It was when we played, there weren't, like I said, it was only a Southern California sport, and there were, quite a few people that knew about beach volleyball. Like Manhattan was the best because one year Greg and I played in Manhattan. There was 138 teams. 78 is when we won that one. 138 teams in that tournament. But back then it was like you had these beautiful girls going to the beach, and you're doing this, you're playing your games, going in the water, spending time in the sun. And then all of a sudden, when St. John and Stokely and Hovland and Dodd in the early 80s and in the mid 80s, that's when volleyball was really starting to, they had prime ticket. It was like hot summer nights and stuff. And everybody around the beach knew about this stuff, and it was getting bigger and bigger. And in the early 90s, they were making, I think I saw a thing where the 20th guy was making $100,000. They were, Miller Lite was on, Jose Cuervo. They had a lot of sponsors. They were all making, all these guys were making money. And then the Olympics, and then they thought it was just going to, they got first, the U.S. got first and second in the Olympics, and they thought it was just going to explode. And then I'm not sure that, I can't remember the guy's name who came in and took the AVP over, and it just started to go downhill. And I don't know what happened. You would think it would be, even today, that now that AVP only has like 8 or 9 tournaments. They don't have, like, in the heyday, they had 27 events. They were going, it was all over the place. They were all over the country. Now it's like 8 or 9 or 10 tournaments. I'm not really sure what happened, but it's like these girls playing, they look unreal. I don't know. I'm not sure about it.
They should have you running the AVP. You bring it back up.
I thought it was going to take off. I mean, these guys were making so much money at the start, and then at 97, it just started to go down. I don't know what happened. The AVP went bankrupt in 97 or 98. That's when I was coaching Loyola and Steffes, and they got 10 cents on the dollar on their last 3 tournaments, or 2 or 3 tournaments. They didn't get paid.
So if someone said, hey, let's play volleyball tomorrow, anywhere you want to go, were you saying, okay, I'll meet you tomorrow, we're going?
I'd go down to Manhattan.
All right.
Now, who was I going to play with? Is that what you asked?
Yeah. Either. Either.
I would
Who would
go
you
down
play
to
with and
Manhattan
where?
because I love that. I've always loved the Manhattan Open because it's like, back in the 70s, it was like the biggest tournament of the year. You had the biggest crowds. Everybody knew beach volleyball, so they knew what was going on. It wasn't guys just showing up, but it was people that knew beach volleyball, and they all played, most of them, And it was just this big, gigantic spectacle with unbelievable amount of beautiful women and the beach. It was fantastic.
All right, so we do a segment here called 50-50. I'm going to give you a trivia question from technically 50 years ago. It's not. And you got a 50% chance of getting it right. And this one's really subjective, so whatever you say is right. All right, true or false? Side Out, that great 1990 volleyball movie, is that the best or worst portrayal of beach volleyball?
Interesting movie, but it was bad volleyball.
I know you weren't part of that, but I think Randy was, right? Who's in the movie, right?
Randy and John Stevenson and Steve O'Brad. A lot of guys were in that. Obradovich and Hovland Dodd. They were all in it. All the pro guys were in it.
Did the guys look like they could play volleyball, the actors?
You know, some of them, the guy, Peter Horton, was the main star. He's an actor. He was the main star. I mean, the volley, and then the other guy, those guys.
See Thomas Howell.
I don't know who the other guy. I can see him kind of, but I don't. I know Peter Horton, but I don't know the other guy.
Okay.
But, you know, just that last play where the guy goes up to set the ball and he just butchers it and it goes in the air and then they put it down to win. I didn't like that, but
yeah, it's like when I watch, you know, baseball movies or something. The first thing I look for is I'm like, does it look like this guy's ever swung a bat?
Yeah.
So I imagine when you're looking at something like that, you're seeing it through more of a technical way of like, you would never do that. That's not how you would set this up.
No, exactly.
Does it drive you crazy?
No, it's a movie.
Yeah. You know, Jim, you're an All-American at UCLA. You go on to have a Hall of Fame career in beach volleyball. As Bill mentioned, you're a mentor to a whole generation of up-and-coming volleyball players, both in the gym and on the beach. Let me just say, job well done, my friend. You left UCLA and you turned this into quite a life. The one I know I envy that kind of a life big time.
Yeah.
So you did it your way.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. It was a lifestyle. That's what it was back then. They don't do that now. You know, I coached for 8 or 9 years. I coached Jenny and Annette on the women's side, but I got to coach Steffes and Loyola, and then I got to coach Emmanuel Rego and Jose Loyola in the Olympics in 2000 for Brazil. And, I loved it. It was so much fun being around those type of guys. I just really enjoyed it.
I can tell you, Jim, having been around athletes all my life, basically, a lot of times I'll walk out of a locker room, I'm like, I'm not so sure that guy likes baseball.
Right.
Or, I'm not sure he really enjoys playing football. To hear you say that you basically played for the love of the game and the spirit and the competitiveness that came out, I just love it. I totally dig what you did. So thank you very much.
I spent a lot of time at the beach.
Can I just
you could do worse. You could do worse.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Hey, Jim, Darty, when the Manhattan Beach comes open, it's in the Open, which is in August. Do they honor you at all with all the stuff that you've done for them? Will they honor you at all this year or any year?
They never do, which is, I think, kind of weird. The AVP guy doesn't. I don't know. I think that's the one tournament where they should say, let's get some of the past winners and just do a little thing or, something like that. But he never does. No, they've never done anything down in Manhattan for the Manhattan Open.
Well,
that's terrible.
Well,
that's terrible, man.
We need to change that.
I just want to say you inspired me. I live in Pacific Palisades. I'm ready to go down to Temescal and I'll go play some volleyball tonight.
Yeah, we were doing Temescal when COVID. They took all the nets down in Santa Monica during COVID. So we went up to Temescal. Right. And you could put your own net up there and nobody bothered you.
Right, exactly.
Santa Monica, which is unbelievable. You couldn't go on the beach, not allowed to play a sport on the beach during COVID. Which is,
I know, an open air. I get it.
I don't know where your head. They took all the nets down.
Oh, my God.
Well, Mark will be calling you from the ER tonight after he tears his Achilles. So
that's right.
I appreciate.
Yeah, it's not that easy for me either.
Yeah, I'll go. Thanks a lot, Jim. I'm hurt.
That's right.
There you have it, Jim Menges. Thanks so much. Enjoy your day. Thanks for talking with us.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
So there you go. There's a guy who graduates from a major university.
Mm-hmm.
He's an All-American. I don't know what he got his degree in. Doesn't matter. He was like, no. That's not for me. I don't want a 9-to-5 job. In fact, I thought it was awesome. Most actors, work so that they can get auditions in the day, and he was just like that. He was like, oh, I'll work a little bit at night, so that I can.
And it's always the same jobs. It's bartending,
right?
Because bartending is a job you can make good money at night. He had the good looks. He was also a star volleyball player. His bar was filled.
Yeah,
his bar was filled.
Yeah.
But you just, nothing against the AVP tour. I'm not saying bad about it. But if you go to their website, there's evidently a tournament in Vigrinia Beach. Virginia Beach.
Oh.
They've got it spelled wrong, even on their...
I was about to say, where?
Vigrinia. If you can't even get that right and you're trying to promote the sport, he's got it right. They don't care anymore. It's just like, hey, yeah, there you go. That's terrible.
I don't get that. I really don't. I really don't get why volleyball isn't more. I get that it might not explode and be like tennis or golf, but... we all know Karch Karai. We all know St. John Smiths. We all know Randy Stoklos. We know these names.
We know them.
They have this kind of stud, reputation.
Yep. But remember, when the baseball went on strike and we were watching. I remember doing sports at CBS, and we were covering beach volleyball because you needed some highlights.
Right.
And that's when you started to get to know people, and you were like, doggone, these guys and girls were great. And it's an amazing sport. I mean, there's a lot of good-looking people out there, but it's just an amazing sport.
And looks like he enjoyed every bit of it.
You could just...
That's how we should all live life.
There was one comment he goes, well, we went down there, we saw the girls, and then we were playing volleyball, and we looked at the girls, and they were there, and there were girls. I kept thinking, yeah. That's exactly,
Right,
it's like 3 or 4 girls in there.
Drinking some beers.
Girls.
Yeah. Way to go, Jim.
Damn right.
Moving on to the Indy 500. It's going to be another, we've mentioned this. We mentioned this with the Daytona 500, which this past year was known as the Daytona 450 because they shortened the race because of a fuel crisis that was going on here in the States. And once again, it's going to have an impact here at the Indy 500. Cars can go it takes 280 gallons of gas to run the Indy 500 this year. Normally it takes 350 gallons. This year it's down to 280 because they're not going to let you go as fast so that you can consume gas. And guess how many, that's like 1.8 miles a gallon.
Wow.
Right? So if you think your big SUV is a gas guzzler, that is nothing.
But they're not going 180.
No. Some of them are.
They might. Yeah, exactly.
You drive on the 210. Yeah. The Indy 500 is known for cars streaking by, but in 74 during qualifying, dozens of, Mark, you ready?
Yeah.
Streakers.
Yep.
Mostly males came out of the aptly named Snake Pit. And then when it was over, A.J. Foyt had a firm hold on the pole position. What the hell's going on in Indianapolis? Come on.
They only arrested 14
I like
of them.
The firm hold on the
right?
Okay.
But it's interesting. They only arrested 14 of them. And then when it ended, the kids actually helped clean up broken, beer bottles on the track and the fence that they had torn down to get access. So they actually did
That would never happen.
Did they make them put clothes on? While
Yeah,
they were
they-
cleaning
No, I
up?
think it was you had to do it completely in the
Well, they
nude.
said they were, like Scott said, they were male and overweight.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, it was, not saying.
Oh my God,
It's-
I wouldn't
how
do that.
come
I'd be
women
afraid.
don't
I'd be
streak?
afraid of splinters, but like working on those fences.
I'm telling you, we mentioned this in the past, unfortunately, but if you ever go to, if you've ever been unlucky enough to stumble upon a topless beach or something like that, you almost can't help but looking because you're like, why is that person naked?
Yes.
It is not good.
I was in the south of France at a beach, and it was a topless beach. I was like,
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah.
Well, I was in the Virgin Islands when I lived there, and it was headed right toward a nude beach because we got caught in a current. And what I saw on that beach, it's affected me to this day. I jumped out of the boat and dug the oar into the sand to turn the boat away. I said, I'm not going there.
So
It's not something I can actually talk about. I mean,
not everybody looks good with their clothes on.
No, very few do.
No, and they all want to just stand there. Like they all three of the guys
Yeah.
like
Yeah, they're
stood
just
up.
hanging out.
Yeah.
Hanging out. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Bada-da-boom.
A golden week for a lot of oldies. Youth wasn't served in the WCT final as John Newcomb beat 17-year-old Bjorn Borg.
And I'm looking at this picture of Borg, and I don't even recognize him as the Borg.
He
that
looks
grew up.
so different.
He almost looks like a girl in this
Yes,
one. I mean, it's like,
yes.
it's really, I don't see any of the Borg that won all those Wimbledon titles, but this is right at the cusp when he starts winning them all.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Borg, this is the first tennis. He's probably the first tennis player I remember who was dominating the sport. This was when he was introduced to the country before he became the best player in the world. I don't remember how many Wimbledons he won. I think at one point he won 5 in a row. Just a completely
11 Grand Slams.
11 Grand Slams,
But what the WCT director said about Borg, I wonder what will happen when he turns 18 and finds out the game is not supposed to be that easy.
Yeah.
Well, he'll just keep winning.
Yes.
He'll get better.
Yeah, man.
John Newcomb, 29 years old, said before he played Borg in the finals, he's calling his parents after he wins, I'm calling my children. Newcomb wins in 4 sets, and look what he won. $50,000, the use of a Cadillac for a year, $1,000 worth of clothing for his wife, and a diamond ring with the score engraved on it. Now they just go, no Cadillac for a year, here's $2.5 million. Is that going to be? Is that enough for you? Are you all right? But maybe not for a smaller tournament like that.
No, I'm glad you said that because I was looking at you said 50,000. I wrote down 550,000.
Oh,
that's a hell of a tournament.
Yeah,
taking the 5 out.
Meanwhile, the WTT, the World Team Tennis, had started up. They were trying to once again, Sports Illustrated really giving a lot of props, trying to help with this World Team Tennis. They were covering it, and with great names like Billie Jean King and Cliff Drysdale and Jimmy Connors. But there were just as many great names not playing it. Stan Smith, Borg, Chris Evert. So that was a problem. As Mark mentioned, what's funny? I don't think that team tennis is the way to go. I don't think you could make a league out of it. And they used to do Davis Cup, and Davis Cup used to be really big. But even still, that was like USA playing France and another country versus another country. And then they would, but what about like a Ryder Cup thing where you took like the top 15 players from the US versus the top players of the world and had like, they do it like they play doubles one day or they team up, I think you could make something out of that would get, because the Ryder Cup has that competitiveness that you just, you see other guys watching other guys' matches and they're just glued to it. It didn't work with the team tennis. For team tennis, the one great thing that came out of team tennis, as far as I'm concerned, Elton John's Philadelphia Freedom song about Billie Jean King.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what that song is all about, Philadelphia Freedom. Alvin Dark, Part 2, one hot spot after another, in which the manager of the A's, who's off to a ragged start with the unruly champions, reflects on some of the troubles he has seen in other towns. He said he always wanted to take a young team and turn them into a championship team. So when Finley hires him in 65 in Kansas City, they have the makings of a juggernaut. They have Reggie Jackson, Catfish Hunter, Raleigh Fingers, Joe Rudy, Sal Bando, Campy Campaneris, all these young players in the system. And in 67, he gets fired. Mm-hmm. In fact, he gets fired twice in a matter of hours. Dark likes Finley. Long story short, Finley wanted to fine and suspend a pitcher by the name of Lou Krause in 1967 after he supposedly used bad language on a plane in front of a woman and a child. And so Dark said, I didn't hear it, so I don't feel comfortable fining him and suspending him because it'd be hearsay. I didn't hear it. And Finley's like, nope, you got to back me on this. And if you don't, I'm firing you. So he fires him. And then they keep talking for like 2 hours after that because they really enjoyed each other's company. Finley was just such a wacko that he fired him. And at the end of their 2 hours, Finley goes, you know what? Why don't you manage for 2 more years? So he goes from being fired to a contract extension, okay? And Dark says, you just fired me. Finley says, never mind. About 10 minutes later, a reporter calls and said the players had sent out a statement in support of Krause. Finley asked Dark if he knew about it. Dark said he knew they were going to issue a statement, but he didn't know what it would say. You're fired again. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, working for a guy like Finley or Steinbrenner just must have been like every time the phone rings, you're like, oh boy.
But also, Finley was very smart. They had said that he had been pushing for interleague play,
right?
And the owners kept resisting it. So he actually had many good ideas. It just, you know, they didn't bring him in until years and years later after he had died.
Yeah, and night games for the All-Star game and the DH. And they said that, and colored uniforms, most of the reasons the owners didn't implement them is because they hated Finley. It was personal. So imagine that. I don't care if it grows the game. I don't care if it makes me more money. This guy's a bastard. I'm not. And he really was. His whole idea was how to improve the game for the fan.
Yes.
And other owners didn't care so much about this. But did you read the story about Tony Horton? Have you guys? I'd never heard of Tony Horton. I don't know about you guys. He hit 27 home runs for Cleveland in 1969 while driving in 93 runs. Dark was the manager and GM, and Horton asked for $100,000. Unheard of back then. Crazy amount. Dark got him to come down in price and down and down and down. But the papers got a hold of the story and made the 25-year-old out to be a prima donna. He got off to a rough start in 1970, and the fans started to turn on him. In the middle of the season, heck, actually in the middle of a game, fifth inning of a game, he takes himself out of the game, and he never played again.
Wow.
He had a nervous breakdown, and he never returned. He was born and raised in Santa Monica. I looked into him. They say he has never once given an interview and talked about his baseball career.
Wow.
Or talking about baseball or anything. That supposedly he got the help that he needed. Supposedly the pressure, the everyday pressure in baseball was just too much for him. And so they said, don't talk about it. And he never has. Isn't that crazy?
I remember him as a player. In fact, I think he might have been on the cover of Sporting News once when it was like a newspaper.
Dark said, Tony Horton was a wonderful kid with wonderful parents. I can't help but take it personally. It was the saddest thing that ever happened to me in baseball. So just these are the nuggets within these stories that I just find. I'd never heard of Tony Horton.
That's why I'm looking him up right now.
Right?
That's something I never heard of him.
Yeah, unbelievable. More baseball. Glowing with the oyster, a pearl of a pitcher, Bert Blyleven, 23 years old, coming off an insane season, okay? 20 wins, 2.52 ERA, 25 complete games, 325 innings pitched, 9 shutouts.
But his curveball was, I mean, I watched him when he came to the Angels, and it was a pleasure. It was so fun to watch him on TV because he wasn't throwing gas. He wasn't 98 miles an hour. He was pinpoint, man.
Yeah.
He was born in Holland.
Yeah, he was. He was. Rigoberto.
And then brought to Canada, I believe.
Rick
But, you know, here, next week we're going to have Tommy John on the show. And Tommy has some people that are working very hard to try and get him his just due.
Right. His thing is absolutely stupid.
It is.
Yeah, I mean.
So I'm looking here, and Blyleven won 287 games. Tommy John won 288.
Tommy John has a surgery named after him.
Yes, he does.
You know, that everyone in baseball is having this year, it appears.
Yeah, his impact on the game and his numbers within the game.
Could you imagine if they copyright on that? So anyone that got Tommy John surgery would have to pay him.
Yeah, and these people all have the money to do to do just that. So anyway, Blyleven, a great pitcher. He said at the time, I'm not worried about becoming a star or anything like that. My ambition is simple. It's the same as Seaver's. I want to be the greatest pitcher who ever lived.
Well, that's not much.
No.
But he's another guy, played 22 years. He averaged 14 wins a year. So there was a little bit of a longevity thing, but still he was.
Yeah, I remember him late in his career. He was the guy that gave up a lot of, he was the kind of guy, he was always around the plate. Yep. So a lot of home runs, a lot of solo home runs.
But when he needed an out, he got it.
He did.
Yes.
Yeah.
One baseball thing I wanted to do before you hit that.
Go ahead.
And my memory of Laren LeGros. So
Oh, my
Laren
gosh.
LeGros, Detroit Tiger pitcher. We all remember him from the 72 playoffs where he threw at Bert Campaneris, Campy Campaneris, and he charged the mound, a big thing. But the 1974 season, I remember this so well because growing up a Tiger fan, I followed every game, lived and died. So they mention here on April 23rd, Laren LeGros pitches against the Minnesota Twins. He technically throws a shutout because he throws 9 innings of shutout ball. He loses 1-0 in the 10th inning, okay? He then says that it's not going to be the last 1-0 game I'm going to lose this season.
That's right.
Sure enough, 2 weeks later, he is playing the White Sox. Again, he throws a shutout, but this time he doesn't throw a shutout for 9 innings. He throws a shutout for 10 innings. He pitches the 11th, gives up a run, and loses 1-0.
Wow.
So he finished with an 8-9 record. His ERA was 4.60, which isn't horrific if you're 8-19.
Yeah.
But to lose like that, not just to lose 1-0, but to lose twice in extra innings, and you throw a complete game.
I remember Laren LeGros.
Right? Yeah.
What's next? The NFL's 15-minute, as we go on to the letters to the editor, the 19th hole, the NFL's 15-minute sudden death period certainly is a most welcome addition, but each team should be entitled to have possession of the ball at least once during that time. The toss of the coin should determine only who gets possession first. That's from Joseph Malik from Berwyn, Illinois, and boy, it took a long time for them to go, hey, you know, that Joseph guy in Berwyn, Illinois, he's got a point. Maybe we shouldn't decide games by, someone who says tails correctly. So they finally implemented where each team gets the ball at least once. Billy, you got anyone?
Evil Knievel
Yes.
wrote a letter in.
That's right. I saw that.
Yeah, he wanted to make sure. He said, your reader should be informed that for 8 long years I have traveled the country trying to do all that is possible with the youth concerning motor safety, the wearing of helmets, the use of seatbelts, etc. I've always tried to discourage everyone, and especially youngsters, including my own, from taking unnecessary chances. You know, so he was out there. Not many guys of his level write in as a letter to the editor.
Right.
So he was obviously, I didn't see I don't remember what they wrote on it, but obviously they probably made it like, he's out there and his kids are riding around on helmets and doesn't care.
Do you think Sports Illustrated got this letter and go, is that really evil?
Right. I was thinking two things.
Cross.
One, how do they, they must have confirmed it, but two, a guy of his stature, because he was huge back then, you would have thought he would have been like, hey, I would like to be able to rebut this. You want to send a reporter out here? And they're like, nah, just send us a letter. I thought this was great. Frank DeFord's exposition on the invasion of our formerly sugar and spice and all that's nice little girls into the hitherto all-male Little League is one of the most amusing articles I have seen in SI for some time. The hilarity of the altercation between the Little Leaguers and the feminists gives rise to several questions. Do the girls want to participate with the boys, or are they being provoked into a situation they would just as soon live without? Why aren't the Little Leaguers hastening to organize and support similar leagues of reputable quality for the girls? And most of all, why are so many adults acting like little boys and girls? If the present state of affairs does not improve, one can only jokingly await the day we begin fighting over the patently unfair his and hers of public restrooms. Thank God there are only 2 sexes. Lonnie Yearwood, Oklahoma City, she would not recognize the world that we live in today. That is certainly true. So, Lonnie, from your words to God's ears.
And there's also one with Dale, this in response to a guy's letter. There's actually, back in 74, there was a girls' Little League. It was called the Sally League. It follows Little League rules and regulations, and as far as I know, maybe the first hardball program for 10 to 12-year-old girls in the U.S. Boys are not eligible to play. So there was something, and even today, it's under NewYorkGirlsBaseball.org. They still have it. It's not Sally League. It's NYGirlsBaseball.org. It's still around. So they were trying.
It took
not
them a
all
while.
the people wanted that, though.
Right. And of course, this is in reference to a podcast we had last month with Jenny Foley, who was the first girl to legally play Little League Baseball. That was released on the 22nd of April. Go back and take a listen to that. It was a really interesting conversation we had with someone who went on to have quite a career in the film industry, but started her her pioneering days
Yes.
as an 11-year-old.
Yes.
So that'll wrap up the May 20th, 1974 edition of Sports Illustrated as we look back at the NBA Finals. On the cover, the Celtics beat the Bucks, but we kind of talked about that last week with Bob Ryan and with Lucius Allen. This week, we want to thank our guest, the unbelievable Al Scates, and the Hall of Fame beach volleyball stud, Jim Menges. Both of them excellent guests as usual. Couldn't ask for more.
Here, here.
These guys are just the
Right.
best.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
every week, there's sometimes I go in and I'm like, we'll see. And they just blow me away. They just blow me away. I hope you at home are as enthused about them as I have been. So for Bill, for Mark, for Jeremy, I'm Scott. Until next time, Tommy John next week. Tommy John, can't wait for that. See you guys. We're past our prime.